Welcome to the Better Eye Health Podcast with Damon P. Miller II, MD. This particular podcast is an excerpt from the weekly conference calls. Dr. Miller focuses on different topics connected to the Better Eye Health Program. The topic of this session is The Art of Acupressure and Healing the Eyes, Part 3. Here is Dr. Miller.
Today we're going to be adding a surprise Part 3 to our series on acupuncture, and part of that is related to questions that have been coming in. And so what I'm going to talk about today in our talk, in this Part 3 talk, is actually more specifically about the acupuncture that we do as part of this program and the technique that's used. For acupressure, yes, that we do as part of the program. So we're going to talk about the Acu-Eye points, the acupressure that's a part of the Better Eye Health Program, and specifically the technique that you use. And I want to begin by saying that whether you're doing points on the face or around the eyes or on the arm or the hands or the feet or the leg, wherever you're doing it, the points you're instructed to do, you want to think of this as having each set of points has sort of two parts to it. So just as an example, we'll use the lymph points. Those are the ones that begin in kind of front of the shoulder and trace the line down in front of the shoulder and onto the arm, and that groove between the biceps and triceps on the arm. And so you sort of walk your fingers down, applying pressure as you walk down along that groove. And in the first part of the exercise, you're going to see if there is any particular point that's tender. And so you walk down one arm and then you walk down the other. If there's no point that's tender, you're done. There's really no more that needs to be done. You stimulated it once. But in part 2 of this, if you do find a point that's tender, then you're going to go back to that point and you're going to simply apply pressure to it. And I'm going to, just to keep this simple, I'm going to ask that you apply just a steady pressure. In other words, you push in, you engage the point. You want it to be firm pressure, but not to the point where it hurts. But it should be almost a little edgy. In other words, you definitely know by the sensation you're getting that you've engaged the point, but not to the point of it being painful at all. And then you just simply hold that pressure. You don't wiggle it. You don't massage it. You don't do circular, left, right, clockwise kind of. You just press, engage the point, apply pressure. And once you've got a good pressure on the point, then take 6 to 12 full, deep breaths. Full, slow breaths. So you just kind of breathe into the point. And imagine whatever tension, whatever pain is there, dissipates with every out-breath. And it may not all be gone when you're done, but that's what you would do on that day. And then you're going to be coming back to these the next day and the day after and the day after. The same is true if you're doing the jaw points or the points around the eye, the points on the hands, the points on the feet. You're first kind of walking through all of the points, looking for somewhere tender. And if you do find somewhere tender, then you treat that with some more focused pressure on just that tender point. Now, the technique for the eyes is a little different. You're sort of sweeping across the points inside the bony margin of the orbit and on the outside, kind of over the eyebrows, top and bottom. So the inner margin of the orbit, the outer margin of the orbit being that bony hole that contains you could also think of it as your eye socket. And so just kind of on the inside edge of that and the outside edge. And propose you sweep across that with your fingertips or a knuckle. But the same would be true. You do that 2 or 3 times just to treat all those points in a kind of easy, sweeping way. But if there was a point that was particularly tender, you go, wow, that's kind of odd. Right at that one point it's a little tender. Sometimes it's right up in the corner of the inner margin by the nose, or could be a little bit out. But if you find a point that's tender, you would come back and put focused attention on just that point with some steady pressure. And so that is the procedure, that's the technique that I recommend for doing the acupressure points. There are other techniques that people use, but really the thing that you're trying to do is to stimulate those points. And there are many, many ways to stimulate a point, and they're all effective. So stimulating a point by needling it is only one way. Stimulating a point by applying pressure, that's called acupressure. Some people have found that you can actually stimulate a point with a low-level laser. That's effective. You can stimulate a point by applying heat, and that's done in a procedure called moxibustion, moxibustion, where you actually burn the herb moxa to stimulate the point. This is a little technical, but many, many ways to stimulate a point, and all of them are effective. We're using acupressure because you can do it without tools, without materials, without needles, and you can do it yourself. And even though a single acupressure treatment may not be as strong as the treatment that you would get if you did it with needles, when you're doing it multiple times a week, week after week after week, month after month, the net effect is the same. And so both, again, I just want to emphasize that both Grace and I had studied acupuncture. I do acupuncture a lot. If I felt like you needed needle acupuncture to get the results that I want to see you all get, I would be helping you find a qualified acupuncturist. But I don't think you need that. You can get all of the benefits, the part of the program, the benefits that come from Oriental medicine, you can get all of those by just doing the acupressure. But it's like everything else in this program. The good news is you can do it yourself. The bad news is you have to do it yourself. So these things work. They're very effective, but only if you do them. And the final point, I mentioned this last week, and I just want to say it again. The points that I find people tend to overlook or not do as regularly are points that are very important, and those are the points on the hands and on the feet. And we're going to be sending out a newsletter here pretty soon, and one of the things that will be an option on that newsletter or in a letter that follows will be getting updated versions of the workbook and the DVDs. We've upgraded all the workbooks and DVDs. If you've joined the program recently, that will come automatically. If it's been over 6 months, you'll have to actually buy them. But we're not charging a lot for them, but putting them together cost us quite a bit, and reproducing them costs us something. So you will be asked to pay for those. But if you are interested, I would recommend it because I think specifically the instructions about the acupressure are a little clearer in the new video. But all of the information is the same, and the information is actually quite good, too, in the workbook. So going back and looking at the workbook you have, the only thing really better in the new workbook are the pictures are better, but the points and the information is all the same. So it's not a mandatory thing that you upgrade that. But it might give you a better sense of doing the hands and the feet if that's something you struggle with, if that's something you're not doing because you don't really quite understand it. I think the video would be helpful to you then.
Tune in for more podcasts and other presentations. Go to www.bettereyehealth.com. There is hope for sight.